Good Friday morning and welcome to Begin in the Word. I appreciate you joining us for our study of Acts sermons and conversions. In this segment of our studies on sermons of the book of Acts, where we're breaking down Stephen's sermon in Acts chapter 7. Let's look now at the preview questions for today's study. Number 1. How did Israel of old respond to Moses? Number 2, did Moses say anything about God sending a prophet to succeed him? Number 3, what is Stephen's point in this section of his sermon? Now, with these questions in our hearts, let's go to the record of Acts 7 and take up the reading at verse 35. This Moses, whom they rejected, saying, "Who made you a ruler and a judge?" is the one God sent to be a ruler and a deliverer by the hand of the angel who appeared to him in the bush. He brought them out after he had shown wonders and signs in the land of Egypt and in the Red Sea and in the wilderness 40 years. This is that Moses who said to the children of Israel, "The Lord your God will raise up for you a prophet like me from your brethren. Him you shall hear. This is he who was in the congregation in the wilderness with the angel who spoke to him on Mount Sinai and with our fathers, the one who received the living oracles to give us, whom our fathers would not obey, but rejected. And in their hearts they turned back to Egypt, saying to Aaron, 'Make us gods to go before us.' As for this Moses, who brought us out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him." And they made a calf in those days, offered sacrifices to the idols, and rejoiced in the works of their own hands. This section of Stephen's sermon is packed with information wherein he gives a scathing rebuke of Israel's ancestors and is showing what real rejection of Moses looks like. Bear in mind that Stephen's audience had arranged false witnesses to testify that he had spoken against Moses. And here he says they rejected Moses, speaking of the ancestors, and in particular, the one that said, "Who's made you a ruler and a judge?" And so he's saying, no, God did. God did. He sent Moses to be a ruler, and not just a judge, but a deliverer, to deliver Israel from Egyptian bondage. And then he talked about how that Moses demonstrated God being with him by showing wonders and signs in the land of Egypt. Can you see how that compares to Christ in the land of Israel in the first century, showing wonders and signs? Stephen is affirming that Moses showed that God was working through him by performing miracles, and the same thing is true about Jesus. And Stephen's audience that rejected Jesus should have known it. They should have seen that Jesus was sent by God because he did wonders and signs like Moses did wonders and signs, only greater. So you see, not only is Stephen answering the lies that were spoken against him, but he's answering them in a way that convicts his audience for rejecting the Son of God and shows that they are the ones who were rejecting Moses, that their actions were just like the actions of their ancestors who rejected Moses. Stephen went on to talk about how it was Moses who said to the children of Israel, "The Lord your God will raise up for you a prophet." And he said, "You will hear him." So in talking about Moses, he reminded them of something Moses taught, that God was sending another prophet who would succeed Moses. And what did Israel's national ancestors do? He said our fathers wouldn't obey him. They wouldn't obey Moses, but instead they rejected him. And what was the result of their rejection? Well, in their hearts, they turned back to Egypt. And they did so by worshiping idols. So their rejection of Moses meant they were serving idols instead of the true God of heaven. And they made sacrifices to those idols. Now let's go back to some things that Moses said about that generation. Deuteronomy 31 verse 27, he said, "I know your rebellion and your stiff neck. If today while I am yet alive with you, you have been rebellious against the Lord, then how much more after my death? So Moses said, if you're going to reject me and rebel against me now and therefore rebel against God, how much more are you going to do that after I'm gone? You see, Moses was concerned about Israel and the direction of their future. And he wanted them to be true to God and not reject God and not speak against God and serve idols. And that meant they had to be true to him and accept his leadership. But that generation struggled with that. Look at what else Moses said. In Deuteronomy 18, verse 18 and 19, the passage that Stephen quoted in his sermon, I will raise up for them a prophet like you from among their brethren. And I will put my words in his mouth, and he will speak to them all that I command him. And it shall be that whosoever or whoever will not hear my words which he speaks in my name, I will require it of him. So God, through Moses, made a clear declaration to Moses. I'm sending another prophet to succeed you, and he will be like you. Who else did miracles on the grand scale that Moses did? A lot of the other prophets of God that followed Moses didn't perform miracles at all as far as the record that we have. We know Elijah and Elisha performed some miracles, but not the great number of mighty miracles that Moses performed. But Jesus did. And that's why Stephen talked about the miracles that Moses performed, because those miracles confirmed that Jesus had God working with him, that he was that prophet who was like Moses, and that Moses said to Israel, you're supposed to listen to this guy that God sent. And that passage to which Stephen referred warned Israel that if you don't hear this prophet that is coming in the Lord's name when he speaks, I will require it of you. In other words, God is going to judge those who reject this prophet that comes to succeed Moses. And Jesus was that prophet. And Stephen is, by referencing this passage that God spoke through Moses, by referencing that, Stephen is honoring God and honoring Moses and condemning his audience for rejecting God and rejecting Moses by rejecting Jesus. With this clear logic and teaching from the law, he has them pinned against the wall, and they cannot answer. Look at what is said in John 1 and 45. Philip findeth Nathanael and said to him, we have found him of whom Moses in the law and the prophets did write, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph. These men, these Jews of first century Israel, they understood that Moses in the law wrote about the coming Messiah. So when they believed in Jesus as the Messiah, they were showing they believed in Moses. Remember a passage that we looked at in yesterday's study in John 5 and 46. If you believe Moses, you would believe me, for he wrote about me. These people in John 1 displayed their belief in Moses by believing in Jesus, that he's the one that Moses wrote about. But Stephen's audience displayed that they rejected Moses by rejecting the Jesus of whom Moses wrote. So let's go back then to our questions. How did Israel of old respond to Moses? They rejected him and turned to idolatry, ultimately rejecting God. They were guilty of the charges that Stephen's audience had brought against him. Number 2, did Moses say anything about God sending a prophet to succeed him? Yes, absolutely. Moses foretold the coming of Jesus Christ and commanded people to follow him, to listen to his teachings, and warned that they would face God's judgment if they rejected him. Number 3, what is Stephen's point in this section of his sermon? Well, Stephen's point is that he doesn't reject Moses. He's not the one that's rejecting Moses. It's his audience that rejects Moses by rejecting Jesus. To accept Jesus is to accept what's taught in the Word of God. And that includes the Old Testament scriptures that foretell the coming of Jesus. We honor Jesus when we honor his Word. And the Bible is the Word of God. Do you honor God today by honoring his Word? As we've begun today in the Word, I pray that you'll live out today and every day in the Word of God. Thank you, and God bless.